There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so my name's Ryan Dryer, husband, father, and I guess a hard worker at least.
Okay. Well, I'm Erin Dreyer, and I'm a mom and a wife and a homeschool mom and a military wife. And we are going to talk about marriage, homeschool, finance.
All
I think
that right now at one
no,
sitting,
no, just like as overall.
that's a
I
lot.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews,
Okay.
but I think we'll be pretty vulnerable as it progresses. Might have to turn off comments. but, but I mean, we'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, I guess if this is introductory, then we've been married for it'll be 13 years in March 1st. I don't have anything special planned.
Well, you better get on it.
Well, I mean, I thought about, you and what, we could do. Sometimes, I think about what I've done in the past. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to beat that. And then sometimes the years pass. I'm like, yeah, I wasn't even close. And other times I'm like, okay, I surprised myself.
Yeah. Sometimes you surprise me too.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone can beat um Kylan's 18th birthday.
Well, you have to set a high standard for your kids because, you want them to know what's out there for them. They don't just have to settle. That's just kind of the way I see it.
All right. My question of the day that'll lead our
Of the
topic of
day,
conversation.
or
Yes.
are we going to do this weekly? Because I need to know.
Well, this is a question of like this video. It looks like I'm looking all over the place, but my camera's like here. You're like here. And like I'm like here. And then like it does move. So I'm gonna try to look at the camera more. But all right, I'm gonna look down because I do have. So how do you feel about your education that you've received now
Are you
as
talking
we've
about
been
like since we've been married or like my whole life, including public school? Because I can tell you right now, if it's regarding public,
like progress into it? Like how has it changed? How has your view on the education that you've received, I guess, changed through like present day?
well, to be quite honest, I've gotten a lot of my education from you, and listening to you and your
So
and your,
I'm gonna teach your classes for that one. Okay. Kidding.
I see your heart, and over the years, I've learned to get to know you more than just on the outside. I've got to know you on the inside as well, and where your heart's at, and your heart is with the children and raising them up and being a good wife. And as I've progressed in my education, I've realized that family and how you treat others is more important than any education that you can ever get. And it's the love that we need to ground our children in, so that they have a solid foundation for which they could build their lives upon, and take that to their wives and husbands and their children.
So that's your total view.
Well, my total view that encompasses it. The nuances of my education, um, beliefs. They've changed, but I didn't really think too much about it until what education I was receiving versus what I'm getting now. Until my eyes have kind of been opened up to the system of public education and how it is ruining our children. It is dimming their view on life. It is keeping them in a box. And what was that lady's name that we watched that you sent me a video of? What's her name?
Sarah Janice Brown.
Yeah, yeah. She mentioned something about you allow your children to be creative and use their imagination, and you foster that and you nurture that. And the public school system does not do that. They teach you one thing to get you ready for the next. They place emphasis on different things, and mainly around funding, but that's for another day, I guess. However, my point that I'm trying to make is once you get kids in that system, that public school system, their mindset is focused around their homework, their friends, and sports. You get them distracted from who they are. And like I said, it dims all creativity and dims who they are as a child of God.
I think it completely changes like your perception on everything in your life, because there's been so many times like I'm interested in this growing up, I'm interested in this growing up.
Yeah.
And it's mainly like I was a reader. Like I was a reader. I love nature. I'd go and climb a tree and I'd read.
Yeah.
Like that was my thing. And I'd pack a bag and it said actually like like I think it said survival kit or something on it. And it was just I don't even know what was in it. But like I'd pack that backpack and I'd mainly take a book and I'd go read. And then but my interests were always like just way out there. Like I thought they were way out there, but really they were just like I guess normal kid interests, but they always kind of got like shoved down because I was taught like if you did not wake up early in the morning and work until like a decent time in the evening, or if you did not go to college right after high school, then you were never going to amount to anything anyways.
Well,
Like that
that's
was the only way
yes,
to amount to anything. And it
yes.
was always like, well, that's not practical. Like that's not practical. If I was like, I'm interested in this, well, you can't really make money doing that, or that's not how things are done.
No, I get that. And I think we were both raised in the era to where it was pushed down, our parents' throats that that was the only way. And so what did our parents do to us? You know, they done the same thing to us as was done to them. And were they following Christ's example in all this? Maybe they believe that they were.
Well, I mean, that's another video for another day, but that just goes into like how many Christian parents go to church and are Christians, professing Christians, and live a Christian lifestyle, but still continue to raise their kids
A
the same way.
mediocre Christian lifestyle.
Yeah, but continue to live their or raise their kids the same exact way. Like, no, that's not the way. You have to do education like this. And like, there's so many times that I've tried to like do something different in education, but like, it's so ingrained in my mind. Like, I keep going back to this. Well, we need to have this many subjects in a day or this many subjects in
Yeah.
this week because, or school has to be done in these hours because if not, and my kids are not going to learn, they're not going to amount to anything. And then I'm just going to be a failure and still. I'm over 40 years old and I'm still wondering, like, oh my God, what are they gonna like? What are people gonna see in my kids? Like,
Well,
are they gonna amount to anything? Like, I'm doing exactly, I think, what my dad had this like image, you had to uphold an image,
right.
which was partly because of his job, but yet I don't want to do that to like if they want to do something that's totally crazy, like or like they want to be a tinkerer, I don't know, then I need to foster that. I need to get them everything that they need to do that because instead of no, we got to cover these other subjects. We got to do this and because you're not going to amount to anything.
Well, at what point do you realize that, hey, once you teach your children to read, they can learn everything on themselves with some guidance? I mean, is that not a good kind of foundation principle to kind of look at?
Well, yeah, if they can read, if they can research, if they can find the information on their own, they can pretty much teach themselves anything or learn anything.
Yeah.
Um, but we still kind of like, no, you got to learn this, and we don't even get them a chance to explore how much they can research on their own, like how much they can do on their own. Like for example, like you find like the other day when you posted the video on Facebook of Kingston like making that RC car run after like I don't know.
It was sitting for over a year not running. Right.
Yeah, yeah, but that is not something that I can do. but I can give him the supply. I can't make a car run. I mean, you can, but you were in a totally different state. And we were like, all right, well, here's this. I mean, he can read excellent. He knows how to research. We just needed to give him the materials. He sat there and I don't know if you've seen his room
Oh, I've
where
seen his room.
he reorganized his room.
Yeah.
And these are his electrical components. By the way, he is 10 years old. These are his wires, these are the tools, like everything's separated like and organized, and this is his workstation. And he sat in there and he researched and he organized and he got all the parts. He's like, I think I need this and I think I need that. And we're like, okay, well, this is what we got. And he had to run it, but he done research on not just the electrical components, but the way the motor worked. He's like, yeah, I don't think the battery's holding the charge, and I think I need a bigger, a different motor. And he was taking motors out of things that didn't work and putting them on. And he figured out that he could put
More
like
batteries together.
batteries
Yeah.
together and make it even like
The
faster
faster.
and more energy. Yes, he figured this out completely on his own because we let him, and I give him those days, and he wasn't doing anything else. But look what he accomplished. Like he wasn't doing much of anything else on those days because he was so focused on that. I was just like, all right, let's just run with this. Let him work. But that's what he did. He did not do anything else. He was like, this is gonna work. This is gonna this is gonna run, and I'm gonna figure out how to make it run.
Yeah. And he did. I'm proud of him. Proud of all of our children.
He did. You know, but I feel gypped on my education. Like there's I think the more you learn about how you can educate your own kids and the books and the resources and homeschooling, you know, oh my gosh, I feel totally gypped
Well,
on my own. There's so much that I've learned just teaching my kids. I'm like, I
right.
did not learn that in school. I learned for a test. That's all I did. I studied for a test. I took the test, and then I did not recall. I don't recall anything for the most part.
Well, growing up, it was rough for me in public schools. I went to a couple of three different ones, four different ones maybe, and they were all different, and they each had their own challenges. But the biggest thing was I didn't want to be there. You know, I remember in grade school, my mom would drop me off in grade school, young age, elementary, and I would cry like hysterically and go to the door, and the nursing care worker wouldn't let me out, and like I needed my mom. I needed my mom to be there for me. I needed her, through many stages of my life when it was the public school that took over and says, no, this is my job, you're mine now. And that is not the way God intended things to be. We release our children out into the public way too soon, sending them to school, letting them go out and learn stuff at an early age that they're not supposed to learn.
No. Well, and so many like, well, my kids are missionaries. They're not old enough to be missionaries.
No, absolutely not.
Like I could barely survive. Like
Right.
now, probably in high school, around some of the stuff that I have heard. But I mean, Jesus didn't begin his ministry.
John didn't
So
either. John
it's
was out in the wilderness by himself,
yes, and
preparing.
there's probably a reason. And
Absolutely.
God knows his heart. He might have been vulnerable. Maybe he was more of a follower at his early age. He's like, you need to spend some time in the wilderness. You need to be by yourself. And there are those of us that do. Like I would welcome being in the wilderness by myself. I'm not a people person. Like oh, people, like I don't want to be around them. But I think it we that's our job, not and our job is to keep our kids and to shelter them. And people like, well, you shelter them too much. Well, it's our job to do that for a while so that we can introduce things from the world at a pace that we feel is fit for that child, because some are ready for it before others are. Like our youngest, he's his feelings hurt easier than like our boys, our older boys. Like they're like, and they can shrug, and it's like water on a duck's back to them for the most part. We see it affects them later. They'll let it out on in certain ways, but like visibly, our youngest gets his feelings hurt because he can voice it. He'll like, well, this ain't right. So
So
they're
what?
just
Yeah.
they're not old enough, and that's not their job. The school shouldn't handle education. They shouldn't handle discipline.
I got spanked in school a couple times. Yep. That shouldn't never happen.
Well, funny story. My brother, who's older than me, they still had spanking then, as like for everyone, and he refused to let the principal or the teacher spank him. Like he sat down and he just like refused, and they had to call my parents, and they're like, he's been in trouble. Spanking was called for, and he refuses. And my mom was like, well, that is our job. And he's like, no, if I'm getting spanked, it's going to be my dad or my mom. And I
Yeah,
don't even know if they actually spanked him, because he stood up and like, no one else is spanking me but my mom and dad.
absolutely. So what would you say to like some parents out there that may be struggling with the idea of pulling their kids from public school? What gave you the courage? Because we sent our kids to the public school system at
Yeah,
one point.
they started.
Yeah. So what led up to kind of give me a rundown on when this happened and kind of what our views were on it?
I'm like, oh, my nose is running. Okay. Um, so our oldest was in second, and the boys were in kindergarten, and I had been the boys' preschool teacher, so I knew what they knew, and they could do their colors, they could do the alphabet, and boys are just different. And I didn't know a whole lot about homeschooling. I only knew like a few people that homeschooled at that point. And like most of the people that you knew that homeschooled were just weird.
Different,
Like
different.
there's the ones that we didn't dress like, or we didn't go to their church or anything like that. You're like, oh my gosh. I actually met someone in church, June, that had homeschooled hers, and she was I think had a daycare in her home, and she was a previous teacher. So she kind of, I was like, oh, this girl taught, and she homeschools her kids, and they're normal. I'd been to their house. I'm like, oh, they wear normal clothes and all that kind of stuff. And finally, so it was kind of ingrained in me. I had been asking some questions about it and been trying to do some research on it.
This was probably around what 2013.
Yes, 2013. And I think it was 2014 at the beginning of that year when they done their third quarter um, parent teacher conferences. Um, of course, some stuff had went on with our oldest. That was more of a security thing.
Right. Yeah.
And it wasn't even bad, but they had allowed members of my family to just, it was a small school, but they had allowed members of my family to go in and like have lunch with her, and or go into her classroom, and they hadn't been on the little paper that we signed as the parents. Hey, these are the only people that my kids are allowed to be around or to pick them up or anything. And all of a sudden they were like, oh, what? We didn't think you'd mind. Like, what's the point in filling out those papers as the parents if you're not going to abide by them? So that's kind of one of the first things that happened at the school that was like, I
A
don't
red
really have
flag.
authority. I
Yeah.
don't have authority
No, you don't.
and uh, over my kids. And the second big thing was with the boys. I think it was one of their teachers, because we had them in separate classrooms. One of their teachers was like, I just need your help. I don't know how to teach your son. Like, didn't you go to school for this? He's like, well, he can't even, he doesn't know any, like, he's actually does less and less of the alphabet each time that we ask him. And he doesn't know his numbers and he's switching these letters back and forth and he just writes like this. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Ask, what are you doing when he doesn't do that? And well, he has to stay inside. I'm like, that's the worst thing ever. I like make him march around and spell. Well, we can't have that. I was like, well, it works for me. Make him move around and and learn. He thrives off of physical activity. And they're like, I just don't know how to teach him. And that was probably the end for me. Like I was like, all right, so first of all, I have no authority as a parent in the school system if I'm going to fill out papers and you don't like abide by them. And then second was, you are telling me you can't teach my kid because you don't know him. Of course you don't know him. You're not his mom.
Yeah.
You don't know them.
Well,
And what's funny is I said then, and it just kind of just now dawned on me, like, oh, they thrive off physical movement. They are both like David Goggins, like fans, and that's all they do is work out. And that has been their main, like, their drive as they run, they do weights, they learn about foods, what foods they can have, what's going to make their muscles bigger, what might hurt their muscles, what might extend their performance, like just everything. Like that has been the most dedicated that those boys have ever been on anything to anything, like is
yeah,
physical performance and enhancement.
yeah, I get that.
Man, they were stubborn.
Well, to go back on well, so we ended up pulling them out in 2014, and I get a message from you, and you said that I did it. And I'm like, you did what? Like I pulled them, and that was what, early 2014.
Yeah,
I was in Afghanistan at the time.
yeah.
Was it before or after Kingston was born? Because
It
that
was right after because it's third quarter, so it had been
yes,
like the March.
maybe February March time frame.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I was skeptical. I thought, you had to do it by the books. You had to get up in the morning. You had to do it a certain way because I was indoctrinated by the public school system. And that's the way you had to do it. And I remember telling you, I said, if you're not doing it right, or I don't feel like they're learning, they're going back to public school. I can tell you this right now. I don't care if you stopped teaching them and you just gave up. They would not go back in that public school system. That's just all there is to it. I think you've done a great job and overall, and they still have a lot to learn, and they're still not ready to take off. I look at it like this, you know, life is when the children are at home, we're like building a runway for them, and they're essentially the planes that take off, and to build that runway, sometimes you could build it longer or shorter, because the kids learn at different levels. And right now, I want to build the best runway for our children to take off from. And I think that's what it is, laying the foundation for them to build upon. And I use analogies, kind of horrible sometimes, but I really love airplanes, and so these bigger jets, they take longer to take off. These smaller ones, they could take off, shorter. But we're building a foundation for which it is a solid one, and we're teaching them everything that we can, everything that we know. And like you said, research and study is going to be on them. That's what we're teaching them to do, so that they can learn, the things that we can't teach them.
that we've had so we'll get into family on another one, but we've had family and other people just so worried about, oh, they're what are they even reading? And then whenever you get around them, you almost have to, you can't be around certain family, or sometimes you just can't be around family at all, because every time you're around them, especially when you first start homeschooling, they're quizzing them. Like
Oh,
if you leave the room,
everyone quizzes them.
if you're leaving the room, like they're getting quizzed over something that like I don't even know what like a normal like third grader in the public school would like know, or a seventh grader, or well, they have to know this by this age. I guess they're like Googling it on their phone at the family Christmas or something like
Oh, yeah.
ask them these questions.
Or they compare them to other people's kids around the same age. There's no comparing two kids at the same age. That is one of our major problems that we face in the United States by sending our kids to the public school system. They're not the same.
Right. And well, that goes back to you being in the military. Like you go through school and you're only with kids like your age for the most part, all through school. And then you go in the military for the most part. I mean, your basic training and stuff like that was you were with guys and girls, whatever, and kind of the same age. But like after you get out and you get in the workforce and the military, those guys aren't in the same age. I mean, they're not even in the same place. Like like their mentality is not even like the same. Their home life's not the same. Like, but we force all these kids like you gotta be the same. Everyone's gotta be the same. That's not preparing them to get out into the real world or anything, because no one in life have I been with people just all the same age ever. But back to what I was saying, they always like worry about your kids and are they going to amount to anything? But like our kids have gotten, I mean, I am biased, but I mean, I know other parents are going to say this too, that devote any time to their kids whatsoever, is like your kids get so many compliments.
Right.
Like that's one of the first, like you'll start to notice they're like, man, your kids are so respectful. Well, we are socializing them. We are putting them in all these different environments like that you would be in when you were an adult. That's the biggest thing. Oh, they're socializing. No, it's called real life, real world, and real life.
And here's the deal: we're designed in God's image, anyways. You socialize dogs. That's what I think about. Genesis is very clear. We're created in His image. Yes, we're supposed to be around other people. However, it is in our DNA to know how to interact with them. It's not a learned trait, I don't believe. Some people learn at a different, rate than others. Some people are more socially acceptable. I mean, do you like going out? Hey, we're running out of time. So do you like socializing with other people?
No,
I don't either.
Sleep for like 2 days after I socialize.
Right, exactly. So why? I mean, if we teach our children how to act, and what does the Bible say about how we should treat other people? If they're treating them respectfully and being nice to them and treating them the way Christ would treat them, have we not accomplished something?
That's one of the things like we've got the most like compliments about. I think it's like, man, they're really respectful kids.
No, absolutely.
Like, whew, got it. Okay, pass that one. But it's the skeptics that were the quizzing your kids, or the ones that will probably never recognize that.
Let me ask you this: who quizzed Jesus? It was the people who were claimed to be self-righteous or claimed to be in the relationship with God, when all they were trying to do was catch him in a lie or catch him, in a position that, where they could like have one up over him. And I almost feel like that's kind of what people have done to us and our children. Like, listen, we're following God, and when we follow God, you are going to have that opposition.
Yeah. Well, when his parents, misplaced him for a couple days, he was speaking to the church elders. He was in the church at 12 and they were listening to him. Like he was learning and conversing with people that were older than him, and they were astounded by his knowledge. And in a much smaller scale, we've had people say that about our youngest and his interest in flight and all the big words he uses. I don't even know. Like, I don't even understand some of the stuff that he talks about, but it's all about aviation. When he talks to pilots, they understand what he's talking about because he uses the right lingo.
Yes.
And He'll just like a general in the military. He just strikes up a conversation,
Oh,
and it
that Air
doesn't.
Force guy.
Yes, and it doesn't bother him at all.
Yeah.
He's spoken to fighter pilots, and like it's just like, oh, okay, it's just a regular guy, but
Well,
like it, that's who he can talk to.
yeah, and it's not just kind of just, oh, that's a cool plane. I mean, they could talk specifics at an intellectual level. And that's
Yeah,
kind of what we're going for. And even if our kids weren't able to do that, it's still about how you treat other people, whether you want to be around them or not. You're going to have to be around them at some point.
yeah.
All right. Have you
They
got
just got to know how to learn and how to research on their own, and it unschooling yourself, I think, is the biggest. Like that's you got to have grace for yourself.
Yeah, 100%, and I know that you've struggled, over the years with, finding that grace, and haven't we all? And that's why I decided to, continue my education at the beginning of this conversation in biblical theology, to get to know the person and the work of Jesus himself, God Almighty. And I've learned a lot. And it all comes back to how we treat other people. Are we showing our kids the love that Christ has shown us? Are we reflecting the image of God? Because we are the image of God. Are we allowing him to live within us? And I could see that in our children, and very thankful for that.
Yeah, me too. If you teach them all the subjects and you don't teach them anything about Christ,
It's all in vain.
then that's when you failed.
And that was the biggest problem. That's one of the biggest problems with school, where all these kids are going, they're taking God out of the picture when God is the picture. And you can't take God from a child's life and expect them to enter the kingdom of heaven. You just can't do it. All right, have you got anything else before we close this?
I don't think so. On to the next topic another day. And we're posting this without a name. So when this does come out on YouTube, we finally found a name for our channel, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I might just post something my personal one for now.
Okay.
All right. Love you.
Love you.